Disciple checking in. About to go play some old man hoop. It's not really 7:05, it's like 6:54. I'll be a little late, like maybe 10-15 minutes late, but that's about when first game will start. I really needed the time to warm up my knees. Sorry, I was just taking my gloves off, or glove off. But I was like still groggy. It's the strangest thing. So nerves are a weird thing. If you remember, and I'll get off this tangent in just a little bit. This will be a quick one, but I just kind of wanted to timestamp how I was feeling. I got some life-altering news yesterday, quite literally, which oddly ties into several things of the last few years. But anyway, you remember when Peyton Manning was on the Indianapolis Colts and he had the neck damage, like the nerve in his neck, and he had to take a year off, and the Colts had that horrible year with I forget what his first name was. I remember his last name was Painter. I feel like there might have been more than one starter that year at quarterback, but the principal starter was Painter. Was it Travis Painter, Kyle Painter, something like that? And they just had like a terrible year. I remember at one point people were like, "Oh, he's showing some signs," and I don't think I heard from him ever since. I wonder if he's still in the league. But it led to them getting the number 1 draft pick. And they were able to draft Andrew Luck, who himself retired early because of myriad injuries. I think including a lacerated kidney or liver or something crazy like that, because they never had an offensive line, and he just got pummeled. Kind of similar to what's happening to I almost said Travis Mahomes, to Pat Mahomes right now, and then which ultimately led to him blowing out his knee, which quite literally he was scrambling and then heading to the sideline, and then the weight, he was being tackled and the weight landed unevenly and he blew out his knee. So he literally, even though he has some parallels with Tom Brady, that's not something Tom Brady would do. When he blew his knee out in, was it 2008? That was from a defender basically crawling on the ground and then lunged at his knees, which is why they changed that rule. But anyway, yeah. And then you remember with the nerves, it took a while for the strength to come back to Peyton Manning, and then he had a great run in Denver, though he ultimately had to retire. I mean, he was older by then. I think it was his 17th season or so. Yeah, something like his 17th season, maybe later even, 17, 18, something like that, and ended up having to retire from the Broncos, though he won his last game in the Super Bowl, which he was the weak link. He was pretty bad in that Super Bowl, but they beat the Panthers. But that's how nerves are. It just fires up one day, and then for him it went back out again. But the version that came back, even though he had all these record-setting numbers, I think to this day he has the record for touchdowns in a season, 55, and he might still have the record for yards in a season. I know they extended a game to 17 since then. But anyway, he wasn't the same. He just kind of came back smarter. So, damn, where was I going with? Oh, yeah. So I had pretty substantial oral surgery today. 6 crowns. The most since 2017. I've been on this ongoing project to beautify my smile. So you're probably wondering, for those of you that know me, oh, I knew they didn't look natural or something like that. Well, they actually are, they mimic the shape of my natural teeth, but I'm one of those people that grinds at night, grinds my, and I don't mean working hard at night, I mean grinds my teeth at night, so I religiously wear a night guard, to the point where I can't sleep without a night guard, because within not even an hour of laying down, I'll just wake up with my jaw hurting, because I grind my teeth. So that was an abrupt break. So I wear this pretty expensive $800 night guard, and at this point now I've had 18 of my teeth redone. It's been an ongoing project, because if you know anything about dentistry, it's damn expensive. So don't laugh when you see people that are toothless, in Appalachia, or poor people. I just had one guy come into the shop, married no less, and I think he was younger than me. I think he was maybe 39, 40, but big guy, but many of his teeth gone or rotten out or whatever, and looked like he had been in some kind of fire based on his hands and stuff. So, and he was missing a finger. So tough life for this guy apparently. But he was married. I mean, I don't know what his wife looks like, but I remember him saying my wife. So that just goes to show you, right? But anyway, when you see people, missing teeth or whatever, even if they're employed and stuff, it's because it's dang expensive. The only reason why I get mine done is because I'm fairly vain, right? So if you want to know how much they cost, multiply 18 times like $2,400 per. Do that math, and then plus other labor in between, whatever. That's not just the straight cost. So I've been spending many thousands of dollars over the last like 9 years on my teeth. I have really 2 more next year, and then after that it would just be like vanity type stuff. I could be fine by next year, but my insurance only pays like $1,500 per year, so I pay the rest out of pocket. So that's why it's piece by piece instead of all at once. Just throw it on the care credit and make the payments same as cash for a year and a half, and I'm done. So yeah, nice little $6,400 bill today, but these are first world problems. I'll handle it, no issue. But yeah, my jaw was like on fire. It was like hurting even after the Novocaine wore off. I finished my surgery probably about 7 hours ago, and literally about maybe a half hour, 40 minutes ago, it stopped hurting. I was kind of scared because I thought maybe the crowns were tight or something, in which case they'd have to do them all over again or whatever. And I was, got injected like 4, 5, 6 times or whatever with Novocaine because I'm very resistant to drugs, and I do not want to go through that again. I intended to just take the first like 3 hours of the day off and end up taking the rest of the day off because my first I couldn't really feel my lower part of my face, and then once the Novocaine wore off, it felt like my jaw was on fire, and I actually thought I was in danger, in quotation marks, of not being able to hoop tonight, but it just felt better, like I said, about like a half hour, 40 minutes ago. So yeah, good. Actually, people are texting right now, like, who's coming down? I am probably about 60% of my way on my way over there. But yeah, that's how nerves are. They just kind of fire up. It can be, you can be like dead in the water, and then it'll just be better in the blink of an eye. And then conversely, it can take forever to heal or feel better or to fire up, whatever. And you just don't know, when it will rehab, because nerves are just weird like that. They regenerate in a weird way, and everyone kind of has like their own pace. It's almost like a thumbprint or something. Anyway, yeah, that was like 7.5 minutes of jibber jabber. Just kind of telling you what I'm doing. Oddly enough, we've had, I wouldn't say complain. I rather enjoy that we haven't had a real winter in like 7+ years now. We've actually had, you can see it was like flurrying, but that's all we've been getting lately. So I don't really consider it winter until you get real snow. It is cold. Pay no attention to my tire pressure monitor. I have like a slow leak in my front driver's side tire, but I don't want to replace it until I head to Toronto in March. At which point it's going to be freezing up there. My cousins up there, they showed me their thermometer. Like one night it was like 1 degree or 0, or I think it was like below 0 a couple of nights. We have that coming up. I think Saturday and Sunday it's going to be like 1-2 degrees, but then we go back up next week. That part of winter I don't like, but I can handle it as long as we don't get a ton of snow like that small town in Russia did. Was it like last week, where you can see the snowbanks were like well over the size of an adult male. The snowbanks must have been like 9-10 feet in the air. I was like, they weren't even really like plowing the roads or shoveling. They were digging tunnels, literally. Like, people were just kind of like in the snowbanks, but like walking through tunnels inside of them. That's how much snow it was. How much snow fell. But hopefully, we're already more than halfway through January. This is what it's been. the most we've gotten at one time was like 2 inches, and that was like one storm a couple weeks ago. Hopefully it stays like that and we get out cleanly, but we are due. So anyway, to the point, at the 9:15 mark, I can't say what it is, but this I will tell you eventually, because it's one of those things that's like unavoidable, regarding someone really important to me. But what it reminded me of, because of the way that things ended, remember, and I'll kind of leave this as like little food for thought, and then I'll, toodaloo. So, remember probably like in 2016, 2017, I told you about a close friend of mine, and like, she's the only child like I am, really wanted kids. She, approached me about possibly like, conceiving a child, but I was like, only if it's the right way, like if we're like together, not like, and then I kind of peeled back the onion, asked a few probing questions, and essentially, she didn't really like me that way. She just kind of wanted a child because, like, I was like the reliable guy. She knew she'd have support, and the child would know the father, yada yada yada. But just kind of wanted to, just co-parent essentially. Only problem is it's like many states away, like in the Midwest, I'll say, and it was setting me up to become like a statistic where, like, she was like, yeah, we'll try something, but once I asked a few questions, it was going to be like a sham of a relationship, and then probably stage a fight, for a quote unquote breakup to a relationship that never was. And then I'd either be a statistic where I'm like, I come back to Massachusetts and yeah, my kid's in the Midwest somewhere, whatever. I see them like, every like once a quarter or whatever. Or I'm just stranded out there with like basically no one I know and, just miserable. But, for the sake of the child, so once I sniffed that out, I declined. In a sense, I try to be a very like nice and pious guy, but we're human, right? So in a sense, I was like, all right, just desserts. I got, after all these years, I got my get back a little bit. But now that I stop and think about it, and we're still dear friends, that might not have been the worst thing, right? So life doesn't give you situations or things the way that you draw it up. Sometimes it's kind of like the abortion discourse in this country, right? So people want it where obviously the child rate, birth rate is kind of plummeted as people are like not getting married, and downstream from that, people are having like less children. There's like the rift between the ongoing battle between men and women, and conservatives and liberals. Like men are increasingly becoming conservative, though I think Trump is doing a good job of like reversing some of that, and then women are increasingly becoming liberal. And then obviously, like I said, downstream from that is if people aren't coupling together, even if they weren't getting married before, it's going to result in less kids just because of the animus and people not really connecting. And obviously the cost of living has gone up, and now men, the days of a guy marrying a gal and she's maybe made some bad decisions financially that just kind of live their best life, and the guy just swoops in and pays off her credit cards, whatever, and gets them back to terra firma, back to flat ground, and then they ride off into the sunset. Those days are basically over. I actually have a cousin, the one that I'm closest to, he did that for his wife. I remember him like complaining to me. He's like, man, I'm just handing the checks over, because he was like, we're not from one of those well-heeled families, so like we all just kind of pitched in, and mostly him though, and paid for the wedding, a very quaint wedding, and obviously paying down her debt to kind of get her to like a functional level, and everything that comes with that or whatever. But the days of guys like playing hero that way are if what I'm hearing on the ground floor is true, are a thing of the past. I was never really on that. Obviously if I can swing it, I can swing it, but I've always been pretty realistic about my financial situation, which isn't the worst. I'm fine. Certainly enough to get like, vanity crowns, when I was like more or less fine by most people's standards before. But yeah, so with her, I think I made the video. I think the title of it was, I've blocked at this point probably like close to 1,000 videos, and I think the title was like Unto Death, something along those lines. And basically what it meant is like certain people, when they don't like you, and again, this is in the backdrop of like a very close, my best female friend to this day, but she didn't like me romantically. And then I kind of pulled my veto card, and I was like, all right, well, no child. Unfortunately, she found out some years later that she was down to her last few eggs and unable to, and she tried to do the IVF thing or whatever, and artificial insemination, and it didn't take, and sadly she wasn't able to have children. Obviously I'm a guy, so there's like a little more rope, but you just never know. And again, I'm like, it wouldn't have looked perfect, but it's certainly preferable to like not having children right now. And I know for her, she must have been miserable over it, because like I said, she's an only child like I am, but it was a decision that she made. It was of her volition. She basically said, I don't and I can't like you that way. And then I was like, all right, thus we cannot have children together. Basically an unto death type of decision, right? That's like a huge decision, really, both ways, on the whims. I wouldn't say whim, because you can't really control who you like, though. I feel in a lot of ways like she should have been able to. I feel like she would have been able to turn the corner, but I'm sure she has her reasons she wasn't able to turn the corner, and I had to make the decision I made. So with all that set up, something along those lines happened yesterday. I'll just leave it at that. I will tell you down the road when it makes sense. But yeah, man, it's a crazy life. I think I told you over like Christmas time. I mean, things along these lines have happened before, but each time it feels a little deeper, a little like further away, like less recoverable. But a friend of mine who I adored basically tried to pull rank and was like, buy me this for Christmas. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess he was upset about being behind that Civic. Sounds like he has some kind of exhaust system on there. What is that, an Escalade or something? And someone I adored, frankly, she basically was like a shakedown, right? So like, same theme. I don't like you, but do this for me because like what I look like talking to you for without you doing stuff for me. That's basically the size of it. I bristled at that for obvious reasons. Like, tricking never got anyone anywhere with women. Like, in a past life, I will say, I knew a lot of dancers, strippers. No, I wasn't doing anything with them. I just kind of knew, back when I was younger, when I just turned 21, 22, whatever, and, I started to kind of get out in the world. I was breaking away from my church boy, leanings or whatever, and I'd go to like, gentlemen's clubs or whatever, and over the years, I befriended quite a few of them. To this day, one of them is still a decent friend of mine. She just moved to South Carolina like last year, but we still chat every now and again. And she told me, they all told me, to a woman, right? Not to a man, but to a woman. They all told me, like, they basically hate the guys that come into strip clubs and they can't stand tricks, and they're like, I'm just going to rinse them and get what I can. More or less saying, like, tricking doesn't get me anywhere with you. Like, I know what you're after. I'm just going to take what I can get, and then when it gets to a point where you're like, I'm ready to collect or whatever, they're just going to pretend like they're super upset with you over something, or their hands are tied, or there's some emergency that came up. I mean, the amount of, like, in my past life, the amount of, like, grandmothers of girls that I was talking to that died or whatever, I can't even count them, probably 15 of them or something. So whatever it needs to be, but tricking is not a thing. And you already know the guys that have to trick are the guys that they don't like anyway. So there's like something extra on it, because it's like, you're trying to like, pay your way out of jail type of thing. That's how they look at it. And they really don't like those types of guys. All right, looks like the fellas are there. This is the middle school that I play at. Baird Middle School in Ludlow, in this red town, stick town. But yeah, so that's the point. That's a setup or a preamble for a video coming down the pike. Maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a couple months, we'll see. It's a very delicate situation that intersects with a couple really important things. But I don't know what it is about me, man. I have very strange relationships with people, off of nothing too. I feel like I'm exceedingly nice to, wow, we have a lot of cars here. It might be one of those days where we have like 15 or 20 people. Yeah, I feel like I'm exceedingly nice to people, but I don't know. I carry a certain, clearly a certain aura or something with me, like a negative aura, but we're gonna figure it out one of these days. I swear one of these days, a bear's gonna come crawling out of here. I'm gonna like grab my knee wrap, my basketball sneakers, and run on in. But it looks like I'll be probably waiting for second game anyway. Anyway, the Lord is faithful. Stay with me. God bless.